A new study says that the Canadian government should pursue sectoral trade agreements with China to avoid angering the U.S. That advice is all the more timely because a new restriction in the U.S., Mexico, Canada free trade agreement just signed could effectively give a veto to the U.S. over Canada signing a free trade deal with a non-market economy like China. The study, released today by the Public Policy Forum, couldn't come at a more opportune time as Canadians are pondering what we can do to diversify our trading relationships. Edward Greenspon is the President and CEO of the Public Policy Forum, and he joins me now. Welcome. Thanks for this. As I say, this couldn't be more timely, this report. Take us through your main recommendation. How is it you think that by pursuing sector by sector agreements, we can avoid some of the pitfalls that we might face in an overall free trade agreement?
Well, I know it's self-serving, but I want to agree with you on the timeliness of it. And this is something we've been working on for 18 months, so it just didn't come out of thin air. And we've been working with a group on the question of, how can Canada best represent its interests vis-a-vis China in a way that's economically beneficial and politically acceptable to Canadians. So the recommendation around sectors, we came to the conclusion months and months and months ago that rather than kind of running and perhaps tripping, and it would be better to walk first and build off sectors and then perhaps get to an agreement over time that would be a full free trade agreement. The difference, Martin, is this. The provisions that you refer to in the new agreement with the United States and Mexico say that a free trade agreement, in quotation marks, would be subject to review by the others. Now, a free trade agreement generally means, in WTO terms, something that covers substantially all trade. A sectoral agreement does not cover substantially all trade. It says, okay, we're going to trade and figure some rules of the road and remove non-tariff barriers and other things here in agri-food. Okay. We're going to do this in natural resources. We're going to do this in clean tech. So we recommend a series of these kinds of agreements, each of them with dispute settlement mechanisms, as well as other provisions in there. And we start with a series of things that aren't going to trip over national security concerns.
Okay, examples.
So examples would be agri-food, natural resources, clean tech, some of the ones I gave, engineering services, education, tourism, areas of this sort. Also, we're paying real close attention to the fact that China has this huge growing middle class, and they're putting demands on China. So the middle class this summer had a consumer rebellion against poor quality infant vaccines in China. So they care about high quality food, high quality pharmaceuticals. These points. So then we happen to trip, as you said, the timeliness. We tripped across USMCA. We didn't know it was coming in the form that it came, certainly. And we realized that what we're recommending, is probably onside what the agreement says. Certainly, it's onside the words of the agreement.
So, because that was what I was going to say. Obviously, this would then have to go to trade lawyers, but you're saying that the spirit of an agreement that prohibits or says there would be a review of a free trade agreement, that applies to a whole of the economy free trade agreement or a good substantial part of the economy.
Yeah, what a lot of people call comprehensive free trade agreement. So the imperative is that we need to diversify as a country. 75% of our trade is the United States. We've seen that puts us in a weak position vis-a-vis this kind of negotiation. I think our negotiators probably did very well given the weakness with which they're working. This world was conceived by us in some ways, and that kind of heavy dependence on the U.S. in a more benign type of United States, which is no longer benign towards Canada.
One thing that has come out, though, then, so let's say this would allow us sector by sector to escape that famous Section 32, what's now being called the China Clause of the new USMCA. But we also read with great interest today a fellow named Alex Panetta, who's now writing for Politico, and he and some colleagues have dug up some clauses. He says there's at least 6 other clauses in the USMCA, which, if not prohibiting Canada from having these kind of deals, ask Canada to basically, and it could ask Mexico as well, but ask Canada to basically be the policeman for American tariffs or American barriers to trade. So do you think there still, though, might be, if the protectionist winds in the United States continue, there might be ways that they could still, within the USMCA, prevent Canada from opening up these kind of trade agreements with China? I mean, they give the example, Alex Panetta gives the example, I think, of enforcing, well, we already have the example of steel and aluminum, where we are now basically being asked to make sure that Chinese steel isn't transshipped through Canada. But could that not be the accusations that we're helping China dump in the United
Right,
States?
and I think it's fair enough to say that Canada is not going to be kind of a halfway house to do an end run on the United States and its policies, whatever you may think of those policies. Yeah. So I think that's a fair enough demand, a demand for information. I mean, countries should share information about their trading. What's a little bit more problematic is when you cede your right to legislate in your own country or to pursue foreign relations in the interests of your own country. I think that becomes a much more difficult proposition. I think that the sector by sector should be able to stand up, and it should also be able to stand up for this reason. Canada, 4.3% of our trade basket goes to China. The United States has twice as much trade proportion with China as we do. 8.5% of its trade basket goes to China. So if you just moved up to the US standard, let's say we don't go past that, we go up to 8.5%, that adds $25 billion worth of exports. That is equivalent to what we now sell to Japan, South Korea, and India combined, before we even exceed a US standard. Now, can the United States, regardless of this agreement, continue to impose national security types of penalties on Canada for specious grounds? Yes, they've done it on aluminum. They've done it as well on steel. They could do it in other areas. That's why we better start diversifying and reducing our dependence.
Okay, well, it's a good message, and I look forward to reading the report in more detail. I want to thank you very much for coming in and sharing the recommendations.
Thanks, Martin.